Nathan had always preferred the company of trees to people. At 32, he found solace in the rhythmic sounds of nature outside his small, weather-beaten cabin nestled deep within the woods. The world beyond his secluded refuge felt overwhelmingly chaotic, and he was content to let it drift into oblivion while he immersed himself in the simplicity of his routine. Each morning, as dawn broke, he would rise with the sun. Soft golden light poured through the cabin's window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like fireflies caught in an ethereal ballet. Nathan would brew a cup of bitter coffee, the scent mingling with the earthy aroma of pine that enveloped him. He cherished these quiet moments, often taking long walks along winding trails. The forest was both his shelter and sanctuary. He knew its every sound, the rustle of leaves, the faint call of distant birds, and even the squirrels skittering across branches. Yet beneath this tranquility lay an unaddressed yearning, a whisper of curiosity about what lay beyond his isolated existence. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about him when they passed by or saw him at a distance, as if he were a ghost, an oddity that rarely came down from his mountain perch. Nathan could feel their stares. Sometimes he wondered if they really wanted to know him or if they feared what they didn't understand. Despite this isolation, there lingered a shred of desire for connection, albeit one impeded by years of solitude. As autumn approached and shadows grew longer with each passing day, Nathan found himself wandering deeper into the woods than ever before, each step drawn forward by an inexplicable pull. Little did he know that this journey would lead him to something unexpected, something that would beckon him out of his shell and challenge everything he'd known about solitude. Nathan's explorations of the woods had become more adventurous as autumn settled in, with leaves transforming into a vibrant tapestry of reds and golds. His steps were guided by a sense of curiosity that propelled him off familiar trails and deeper into the thick underbrush. The air was crisp and every breath invigorated him, igniting a spark of anticipation for what lay beyond the next bend. As he walked, he reveled in the sounds around him, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant chatter of squirrels, and even the rustling whispers of branches swaying in the gentle wind. The forest felt alive, almost as if it were inviting him to discover its secrets. It was during one such jaunt that he stumbled upon something wholly unexpected, an old, rusted payphone standing solitary amidst towering pines. The sight was jarring. How had this relic found its way here, so far removed from civilization? The payphone's paint had peeled away in patches, exposing metal that had long surrendered to the elements. Vines entwined around its base, giving it an eerie quality as if nature itself sought to reclaim the phone. Nathan approached it with a mix of fascination and disbelief. It felt like a portal to another world, a remnant of a time when communication was simpler yet deeply connected. He glanced around, half expecting someone to appear from behind a tree or to hear laughter echoing from nearby. Yet there was only silence, thick and profound. Intrigued by this lonely structure, Nathan instinctively reached for the receiver, his hand brushing against its cold metal surface. For a moment he hesitated. What secrets might this forsaken phone hold? With thoughts swirling in his mind like leaves caught in a gust of wind, he took a deep breath and lifted the receiver to his ear, ready for whatever might come next. With the receiver pressed to his ear, Nathan hesitated as he took an eerie silence that followed his action. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the usual sounds of rustling leaves and distant animal calls fading into nothingness. Just as he was about to question his own sanity, a voice crackled through the receiver, smooth yet unsettling. "Hello, Nathan," it said, sending a shiver down his spine. The voice was calm, almost melodic, but there was an underlying intensity to it that sent alarm bells ringing in his mind. How did the stranger know his name? Nathan felt his heart quicken as the voice began to detail aspects of his life that he hadn't shared with anyone. It spoke of his daily routine, how he rose with the sunrise, brewed coffee, and took solitary walks through the woods. With each revelation, disbelief morphed into a creeping unease. Was this an elaborate prank? A figment of his imagination? He wanted to hang up and distance himself from the shadowy familiarity of it all, yet an overwhelming curiosity drew him in. "What do you want?" he managed to ask, his voice steady yet filled with apprehension. The voice paused for a moment before replying. "I want to give you something you've been missing, a connection." There was a hint of sincerity, even warmth, in those words, but they felt laced with something darker. Nathan's mind raced as he considered this strange interaction. Who could be speaking to him from this ancient phone deep in the woods? He strained to hear any clues that might reveal their identity or their intentions, but only silence met his ears again. "Do you remember the boy who left town?" the voice continued unexpectedly, plunging Nathan deeper into confusion. The mention pierced through him like a hot knife. He had buried those memories long ago. What did this voice know about him? What connection would it claim next? Nathan's heartbeat thundered in his chest as he listened intently to the voice on the other end, each revelation pulling him deeper into an unsettling web of familiarity. "You wake up every morning at 6, don't you?" the voice continued, almost conversationally. "You know, the sunrise through your window is beautiful this time of year." A chill ran down Nathan's spine. How did this stranger know such mundane yet personal details? The voice seemed to narrate his life with an intimacy that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. It spoke of his morning rituals, how he brewed his coffee strong, just the way he liked it, and how he often took a moment to stand outside and breathe in the crisp air before setting out for his walks. Each shared detail felt like a needle pricking his skin. "Do you remember when you found that injured bird last summer?" It went on, the warmth of nostalgia tainted by Nathan's discomfort. The memory rushed back, the tiny creature trembling in his hands, helpless and fragile. He had cared for it during its recovery, nurturing it until it could finally take flight again. But how could anyone know something so private? "What is this? Are you spying on me?" he shot back, struggling to keep his voice steady. The connection between them felt unnaturally close, as if their lives were intertwined in ways he couldn't comprehend. The voice laughed softly, a sound that sent shivers down Nathan's spine. "It's not about spying, Nathan, it's about understanding. You're alone out here, but you don't have to be." With each word, Nathan felt the echoes of his past creep closer, intertwining with a present that suddenly felt inexplicably vulnerable. "Who are you?" Nathan demanded, frustration boiling over as his thoughts spiraled. The silence that followed the question loomed heavily, leaving him pondering whether his next step would lead to danger or discovery. Days turned into weeks as Nathan found himself drawn back to the payphone, a compulsion he couldn't shake. Each call became an unsettling ritual, one that both terrified and fascinated him. The voice was now more familiar to him than any other sound in his solitary life, echoing through the dense woods like a haunting song. With every ring of the receiver, anticipation curled in his stomach, a mix of fear and longing. "Hello again, Nathan," the voice would greet him, each syllable dripping with an unsettling confidence. It had begun to unveil not just mundane details but darker currents beneath the surface of his existence, the self-doubt that gnawed at him, the lingering guilt over choices he made long ago, and fears he had tried desperately to bury. "Do you remember your last birthday? The way you spent it alone?" it asked one afternoon as the breeze rustled the leaves overhead. Nathan clenched his fists, frustration bubbling within him as vivid memories crashed back, an empty table set for one, a mocking reminder of his seclusion. How could this voice cut through his carefully constructed barriers so effortlessly? Each conversation revealed another layer of himself, unearthing insecurities he had hoped never to confront. As he delved deeper into these discussions, a peculiar urgency began to consume him. He found that he couldn't resist returning for the bitter truth wrapped in this enigmatic connection. The forest felt charged with energy during these moments, leaves swirling around him as if nature itself were engaged in his mounting tension. But alongside this obsession simmered dread. Who was on the other end? What did they want from him? Was this voice a lifeline or shackles pulling him deeper into despair? Nathan's mind spiraled with conflicting emotions as the calls continued, leading him closer to uncharted territories of both his heart and soul, a journey fraught with potential peril. It was during one of Nathan's late-night conversations that the atmosphere shifted drastically. The voice, usually smooth and inviting, took on a more sinister tone, sending a chill racing down his spine. "You know, Nathan," it began, "you shouldn't have gone back to that place." The words hung heavy in the air, and an unsettling realization crashed over him. This voice knew where he had been and what he had done in a way that felt almost predatory. "What do you mean?" he asked, though his voice wavered with apprehension. "Let's not play games," the voice replied matter-of-factly. "You remember the accident, don't you? That night when everything changed." Nathan's heart nearly stopped. The memories flooded back, a dark evening filled with shadows and shouts, a fateful choice he had made out of fear and desperation. It was a past he had buried beneath layers of regret and sorrow, convinced that no one else knew what had happened. Yet here was this stranger unraveling it piece by piece from the depths of his mind. "What are you saying?" Nathan's voice shook as dread crept into his thoughts. "How do you know about that?" "Consider it my specialty," the voice responded smoothly but with an unsettling edge. "You're not as alone as you think, Nathan. You carry your past with you like a shadow." He could feel panic rising in him like bile. Did this caller have ties to those events? Was someone watching him even now as he stood alone in the woods? The realization that his secrets were no longer buried sent shockwaves through his psyche. Paranoia seeped into every corner of his thoughts. "Why are you doing this?" Nathan demanded, desperation creeping into his tone. The voice merely chuckled softly, a sound devoid of comfort resonating with an underlying threat. In that moment, Nathan understood the danger he had invited into his life. This wasn't just a connection, it was a reckoning that could unravel everything he thought he had escaped. Nathan sat in the dim light of his cabin, the shadows stretching along the walls, mirroring the turmoil inside him. Each call with the voice had peeled back layers of his carefully constructed facade, revealing raw emotions he had long suppressed. The weight of his past hung heavy in the air, and he was torn between two opposing impulses: to confront this enigmatic caller and confront the painful truths they presented, or retreat deeper into his isolation, away from the reality that now threatened to engulf him. As he stared into the darkening woods beyond his window, Nathan felt the familiar pull of solitude beckoning him. The quiet of the trees had always been a balm for his soul, a sanctuary from a world he found overwhelming. Yet now, that sanctuary felt like a prison, one that closed in tighter with each haunting revelation from the voice. He questioned whether it would be easier to abandon this spiraling connection, to let the phone go silent and bury himself in the comforting numbness of his isolation once again. But there was also an undeniable allure in confronting the voice. It had become a mirror to his soul, reflecting parts of himself he had tried so hard to forget. Each conversation felt like a chance to exorcise those demons, an opportunity to reclaim narratives that had once held him captive. Nathan wrestled with this inner conflict. Fear of what might come to light clashed with a desperate need for understanding and acceptance. Anxiety twisted in his gut as he considered what it would mean to delve deeper into these dark waters. What would he discover about himself? Could facing these ghosts finally bring him peace, or would it lead to further despair? The temptation to pick up the receiver again was strong, yet each moment he hesitated stretched like eternity. Ultimately, Nathan was left grappling with a profound question: could he muster the courage to confront his past, or would he choose the safety of solitude over the possibility of redemption? Nathan's interactions with the voice had taken a curious turn, evolving from uncertainty into a troubling puzzle that he couldn't ignore. Each call offered cryptic clues that felt like breadcrumbs leading him through a dark forest, compelling him to confront choices he had long since buried. The voice would speak in riddles, weaving in snippets of insight that both intrigued and unsettled him. "Do you remember the treehouse?" it asked during one particular call, evoking a memory buried under years of neglect. Nathan recalled how he had built it as a child with his best friend, an escape from reality that represented freedom and adventure. But then came the memories of the day it all ended, a fight over something trivial that fractured their friendship. "That was the moment you chose isolation over connection, wasn't it? You've carried the choice ever since," the voice continued without missing a beat, its chill seeping through the receiver. Nathan clenched his teeth, frustration boiling within him. How could this entity glean so much insight into his life and draw sharp conclusions about his past decisions? He was awakening to patterns he hadn't noticed before, decisions made out of fear rather than desire, moments where he had chosen self-defense over vulnerability. The voice unveiled unexamined truths that made him reflect on how those choices shaped the man he had become, reinforcing the regret that often haunted him. As these revelations washed over him, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that this cryptic communication was more than mere coincidence. It felt purposeful, as if a reckoning was brewing beneath each enigmatic remark. The question loomed large: was this voice guiding him toward healing, or merely reopening old wounds? Torn between revelation and confusion, Nathan realized that uncovering these secrets might lead him closer to understanding himself or plunge him deeper into despair. Each call intensified his resolve to piece together his fragmented past and grapple with the unresolved issues that lay hidden beneath the surface. Nathan stood beneath the overcast sky, the air thick with portent, as he braced for one more call to the voice. The rusted payphone loomed before him, its metallic frame warped with age, yet it pulsed with a mysterious energy that beckoned him closer. After enduring weeks of emotional turmoil and inner conflict, he knew it was time to confront the unsettling entity that had become entwined with his psyche. As he picked up the receiver, his heart raced. This wasn't just another ritual, nor was it mere curiosity. This was a confrontation. "I want to know who you are," he said firmly, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. The silence stretched on, laden with tension, until the familiar voice broke through, smooth yet chilling. "You really want to know?" it asked, almost mocking him. The calmness of its tone sent shivers down Nathan's spine, fueling both his resolve and his anxiety. "You're afraid of the truth because it leads back to your choices, and those choices have shaped every moment of your life." "I'm not afraid," Nathan lied, clenching the receiver tighter. "I just want some answers." He relayed his thoughts out loud in an attempt to be assertive rather than reactive. After all these calls, perhaps he could finally take control. "Remember that night at the lake?" the voice continued cruelly, and Nathan felt bile rise in his throat. It recalled details of an incident that had haunted him more than any other, a moment when his indecision cost a friend dearly. You played a part in what happened there. It's time to face that. Each word tugged at emotions long buried but never resolved, pulling him closer to a reckoning that could unearth burdens he thought long settled. Yet there was something liberating in this confrontation, an opening for catharsis where fear had previously held sway. As he listened to the voice dissect his past with surgical precision, Nathan realized that this was not merely a phone call, it was an opportunity for liberation or ruin. With each exchanged word, he felt himself teetering on the brink of profound self-discovery and undeniable suffering. His decision to confront this voice would either rupture the dam holding back years of sorrow or be the catalyst for healing that he desperately needed. With a deep breath, Nathan clutched the receiver tighter as the familiar voice crackled through once more. "You're ready to face what you've been avoiding," it declared, a palpable tension hanging in the air. The once vague familiarity of the voice now felt like a tangible weight pressing down on him, stifling yet oddly invigorating. "I need to know who you are," Nathan demanded, his heart racing as he braced himself for the revelation that was bound to shake his very foundation. "What do you want from me?" His questions hung heavy between them like clouds pregnant with rain. Nathan, it's not about what I want. It's about what you've hidden from yourself," the voice replied. "Do you recall all those times you silenced your truth to protect others, or even yourself?" Nathan's pulse quickened as memories surged through his mind like a torrent, lives intertwined with guilt and choices wrapped in uncertainty. "Those were accidents. Choices made in fear," he shot back defensively, his voice echoing with desperation. A dark laugh echoed back, chilling him more than any cold winter night. "Accidents or choices? They're one and the same when they are left unexamined. Remember that night by the lake? Your indecision cost a life." Each word deepened the wound in Nathan's heart, forcing him to revisit that horrific moment, his friend's terrified face in vivid clarity as regret washed over him anew. The voice pressed on mercilessly. "I'm here to help you remember. I'm your mirror reflecting what you refuse to see." "Stop," Nathan shouted, fighting against tears and anger building within him. "You think this helps? You're just digging wounds deeper." Yet beneath this bravado lay an ember of truth. Perhaps facing these buried memories was the very key to unshackling himself from this cycle of torment. The atmosphere crackled with energy as secrets unfolded and alarming revelations about both Nathan's past and the identity of the caller began to surface, a connection he never anticipated. Then came a profound moment where everything aligned. "You want to know who I am? Look inside yourself." And suddenly, realization struck Nathan. The voice wasn't just external, it embodied all his unresolved fears and regrets, pushing him toward an unavoidable reckoning that would define his future. In this tangled conversation riddled with pain and possibility, he understood, only by confronting this entity could he reclaim his life from the shadows that had long suffocated him. In the wake of his intense confrontation with the voice, Nathan found himself at a crossroads. The air was thick with tension, the weight of unspoken truths hanging heavily around him. He stood before the payphone once more, the rusted metal glinting dimly in the fading light of dusk, a quiet reminder of the emotional tumult that had just unfolded. The revelation that the voice was a reflection of his deepest fears and regrets forced Nathan to confront not only his past but also his future. He felt a strange mixture of empowerment and vulnerability coursing through him. For so long, he had hidden behind isolation, shielding himself from connection and potential hurt. Yet now, the prospect of embracing change loomed tantalizingly close. With each breath, Nathan weighed his options: retreat back into the comforting yet suffocating solitude of his cabin, or take a leap into the unknown, seeking to forge a new path for himself. Memories flooded his mind, friendships lost, opportunities forsaken, all stemming from a fear of vulnerability. Would retreating back into isolation only perpetuate the cycle of regret that had haunted him for years? He turned and gazed out into the woods where shadows danced under the dying sunlight. The whisper of wind through the trees seemed to beckon him to choose life over avoidance, to step beyond the confines of his own making. As he considered reaching out to acquaintances he had long neglected, Nathan felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. What if connecting with others could lead to healing? Nathan's heart raced with uncertainty but also with excitement, a longing to reclaim the parts of himself that he had left behind. He realized that by confronting his past and opening himself up to others, he could rewrite the narrative of his life, transforming pain into strength. With renewed determination, he took one last look at the payphone that had served as both tormentor and teacher. The time for change had come, there was no turning back now. Nathan stepped away from the shadows of solitude as he embraced the possibility of a new beginning filled with connection, courage, and discovery. Through this pivotal moment, he recognized that true liberation lay in facing both his past and the world outside with an open heart. As Nathan stepped away from the payphone, a sense of uncertainty washed over him. The echoes of his conversation still reverberated in his mind, reminding him of the raw emotions he had confronted and the shadows he had dared to face. In answering the call, he had unearthed buried regrets and fears that had lingered like ghosts in the corners of his heart. The woods around him felt different now, transformed by a newfound clarity. In the fading light of dusk, Nathan realized that he had taken the first step toward healing. He was no longer merely a spectator in his own life, trapped in isolation. He had actively engaged with his past, and with that engagement came a flicker of hope. Yet, even as he felt empowered by this realization, a haunting ambiguity clung to him like mist. Had he truly escaped the grip of his past? The voice had been a catalyst for change, but Nathan understood that the journey ahead would not be simple. The echoes of the pain he had endured still lingered, reminding him that confronting one's truth often leads to further struggles before resolution can be found. As he walked through the woods, Nathan contemplated reaching out to those from whom he had distanced himself. There was an allure in reconnecting with others and forging new paths forward, but self-doubt flickered like a candle in the wind. Would they accept him after all this time? Would he be able to face them without succumbing to the weight of his history? In this pivotal moment, Nathan recognized that liberation would not come from avoiding his past but from integrating it into who he was becoming. He was left with the daunting realization that while he could strive for change, the echoes of his choices would always remain, a reminder of where he had been and a guide for where he might go. As twilight deepened into night, Nathan paused one last time at the payphone, feeling its presence lingering behind him, a symbol of his journey into vulnerability and connection. Whether he would fully escape his past or learn to coexist with it remained uncertain. What was clear was that answering that payphone had forever altered the trajectory of his life, setting him on a path towards self-discovery that was just beginning to unfold.